Welcome back to Beyond the Helmet. I'm your host, Steve McGrath, and I want to start by saying thank you. This is our 100th episode, so thank you to everyone that has listened, subscribed, left us a review, sent us an email, social media interactions, everything, all of it. Thank you. And please, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review, and reach out to us. Tell us what you think. But for this 100th episode, a very special episode, I am pleased to be joined by Hakeem Valles. Now, Hakeem has just sat out the last year of the NFL. He chose to step away after a couple years in the league to focus on his professional endeavors. And oh, by the way, he's thinking about making a comeback. But what he's done since then, and even what he did while he was in college, is pretty special. He's focused in real estate. He's done a lot of work acquiring multifamilies, and he's turned it into a full-time profession. So he doesn't need the NFL to have a long, fulfilled career. He already has that going. So this episode, he's going to talk about how he had that interest early on, how he grew that as a professional athlete, and how that football sports lens helped him become the professional that he is. So I'm going to let Hakeem get into his story, but first I need to remind you all that we're brought to you by Team Builder, and Team Builder works with over 500 high school football programs nationwide, as well as colleges and the NFL. So if you need any help with weightlifting programs, they're your go-to source. Use Victory, VIQTORY, as a promo code, and you will get a free gift. Now, without any further ado, here is Hakeem and his story. All right, I am pleased to be joined by none other than Hakeem Valles. Hakeem, how's it going today?
I'm great, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for taking the time. Before we went live here, and I shouldn't say live, but before I hit record anyway, and we started this conversation, you were telling me about a couple different things that you have going on in the real estate space, which is obviously something that you've been passionate about for a very long time. And, for about, is it 15 months now since you told the Giants that you were going to hang it up? It's what you've been doing full-time professionally?
Yeah. So it was February of 2019. So probably about that end of February, beginning of March. But yeah, been full-time real estate, full-time entrepreneur, and I've launched a global media agency as well.
So before we get into any, one compartment of, your entrepreneurial life, how do you go about just sort of segmenting your time so that you can actually, water each part of this, garden, if you will?
So first, I used to be a very shoot first, aim later type of guy. It's one of my mantras. I still am, in a sense. My biggest thing when I was playing is I didn't have a team around me. Like now I have a team of 10 around me, plus having an amazing business manager, a mutual friend of ours, Jake Miller, um, has really organized my life into a bunch of different buckets. We actually use, I don't know if you've heard of, actually here's the book right here. David Allen, his Getting Things Done systems, really for any entrepreneur out there, anyone trying to be productive, it's really allowed us to compartmentalize everything. So we've got our in tray stuff that's just, every day you being an entrepreneur, you got wild thoughts of just things that you could do, want to do, someone you just met, conversation you just had, idea someone just brought up that you resonated with. You just put it in your in tray, and then at the end of the day, or whenever, you then break down your in tray into what's next. So you either take it from that to next actions, or you take it to waiting. So you actually did something and you're waiting for a response from it. You put it, or you can compartmentalize it someday maybe. I've got a huge someday maybe category of just stuff that we're not.
I think we all do.
And then you got like a reference tab of just stuff that you want to kind of come back to, and that has really helped everything with me, because it's, one, allowed me to focus on, what is our goal? What are we trying to focus on right now? And how do we actually reverse engineer our success versus just like, I don't think there's like, I'm big on not judging myself. So I could have 70, 80 things in the air. I could care less if 30 of them fail or fall, because I don't judge myself from that angle. A lot of people will only have one thing in the air because they're scared of letting anything fall when they might be missing out on a whole bunch of other opportunities. I'm an offensive guy.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong, because I could absolutely be off base here, but it looks like you started with multifamilies, at least when they were your own projects, and you were sort of making all the calls. But it seems like you are now in commercial. And I don't have any knowledge, right? If you're in the business space, like actually owning the business entities. So do you have like a preferred market that you go towards, or are you more, where's the opportunity?
So us right now, so Empathy Capital Group is the name of our real estate company. And so just after being in real estate for 8 years and understanding what I like and what I don't like, I flipped houses, I've had small multis, I've managed my own properties, I've had property managers, I've asset managed. I've realized just what I like and what I don't like, and I've realized recently I'm not crazy about operations. So the model we use is syndication, and right now we're doing co-syndicates where we're partnering up with experienced operators in the markets that we focus on, and essentially provide and deploy that capital, for those projects. But the markets that we focus on it's all not math, but it's all data for me. So it's right now we focus on Kansas City, the Orlando, Tampa stretch, Phoenix, Arizona, and Baltimore. And that's the first way I started to find my markets was like when I was playing, I hired a demographer and had them scour the data on the census site and the Bureau of Labor Statistics site of essentially where are the jobs going, where are the people going, and then actually visiting those markets, getting a feel for the brokers, the investors, just everyone in those specific cities. And like here's a perfect example. When I was playing with the Lions, just from a data standpoint, there's a market called Elkhart, Indiana, where on paper, it seems like the most booming and best real estate market there. At that time, they might have had like an 8% job growth and population growth. And I'm like, and it was like I think I was on a practice squad at that point for the Lions. And I was like, it was a weekend. I'm like, I got to drive there and figure out what the hell's going on. And literally drove 4 hours to maybe 4 hours to Indiana from Detroit, because it was an away game. So I had like Friday through Sunday. And I go there. And one thing I do when I go to markets is I try and, eat at different places and just talk to everyone, just be a fly on the wall everywhere and just be nosy besides being brokers and investors. And one thing I didn't know about Elkhart, Indiana is the RV capital of the world. And in recessions, people don't buy RVs. And Elkhart, Indiana was the first place Obama went and visited when he took office because they were in such a decline, such a steep, like I'm sure I haven't looked recently, but probably right now, I'd say they're probably not doing well because not many people, people might buy RVs at this time because you actually can travel in an RV. But in '08, people weren't buying RVs. So it was like, boom, on paper, this place seems like a great place to invest. But in reality, a recession hits and then your investments are going to drop because it's a boom or bust type of town. But like that's kind of how I go. I'm very strategic about how I find the markets.
Got it. Now, of course, now being dedicated to it, you have resources in the time and energy. As much of it that you want to dedicate to it, you can. Very different than doing it while being an athlete, of course. So, I being just like a sort of a journeyman during your time in the NFL, where next week isn't promised. How much did that strain your ability to really pursue this passion and this business model? If you're going to be in Arizona one week and you just don't really know what's going to happen the next, did you really sort of wait to go full throttle until you retired? Or so, was it more sort of, call it half speed while you were playing, just
It
with
was a
the
lot of
uncertainty?
half pregnancy, but it wasn't because of uncertainty. It was just because of honestly more of time. When I was playing in those cities, like maybe digitally, I didn't take advantage enough of like the social equity aspect from a business standpoint. I squeezed the hell out of the orange of those cities. So like when I was in Arizona, for example, before buying my first property, there's this site. You ever heard of biggerpockets.com?
I have.
So I posted on Bigger Pockets forum saying, "Hey, my name's Hakeem. I'm a tight end for the Cardinals. Would love to network and hang out with a bunch of guys who are interested in the multifamily space." And like 50 people responded to that forum post, and I took every single last one of them out to coffee, out to dinner. They walked me their properties. Some of them just pitched me right when I met them, and I'm like, "Yeah, get the hell out of here." And but from that, like I did that in every city I played in, and I took it, like I tried to take advantage of it as much as possible. And like now, a lot of my focus for a lot of the stuff I do right now are in Detroit, in Phoenix. New Jersey is where I'm originally from. So that's, I wouldn't say it's easier for me there, but it just wound up working out really well in that sense. So it was, yes, it was very hard for me because I didn't have the team around me back then. It was just me kind of privately being an entrepreneur in my own realm and not necessarily talking about it, just putting my head down and going. Like I bought my first property in like April of 2017 and didn't talk about it until 2019.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I wanted to ask is, you can talk about it, right? Maybe in a locker room when you're with guys and that you're always around like a very large team of people. But particularly now when you're not tied to anyone, right? You have your team of people, what is your social media approach in terms, because I mean, it's a different audience for Instagram versus LinkedIn versus, Twitter or anything else. How do you think about whether it's real estate or any other venture that you have, just sort of taking those different channels and figuring out how to disseminate your message?
For me, I see content as I mean, for me, there's no end game. You know, like being an entrepreneur is a forever thing for me. There's no finish line. So when you're trying to build in, perpetuity and really scale what you're trying to do, I don't have to, a lot of people are throwing a lot of right hooks and a lot of people can't hold their breath when it comes to social media. They have to sell. They have to almost not sell their soul, but sell their soul essentially. And I see social media as just a massive opportunity to build brand at scale by documenting and posting your truths and trying to figure out, before I post something, how is this going to bring value to this audience? So, if I have one video that I'm posting, let's say on Instagram, that I might post on LinkedIn, that I might post on Facebook, all three videos I might post them, but all three of them will have a different caption. LinkedIn's more of a business type of mind. Instagram is your friends from home, and Facebook is, your parents and their whole demographic. So it's from my perspective, I really treat like right. I mean, we have a solid system now, having a production team, having interns, having employees that can actually turn up the content for you and be waiting for you to now post. That's a little different. But from my eyes, like when I first started, like I didn't start post. Like, here's a perfect example. When I said I didn't talk about my first property until 2019, so right after I retired was when I started posting truths. Like I posted on LinkedIn, how I bought a 4-unit apartment building in the NFL. And like my very first post on LinkedIn had 300 connections, and I literally walked through the process of how I used an FHA loan, how I put down only $13,000, how I lived in one unit and rent out the other three for free. I mean, to live for free. That video got 55,000 views on LinkedIn and got invited on 15 podcasts. Got like, I'm sure as an FA, you know what a 1031 exchange is. Two people had $250,000 that they had like 20 days left on a 1031 exchange, and they needed to deploy the capital into a deal. And like reaching out to me, like, hey, you got any deals? I got $250,000. I'm like, no, but let me get your number. And then like I got 3 paid speaking engagements from it, and I'm just like, wow. Like from that, I'm like, I need to triple down on this, because like this is wild. And like my next video got 20 views, the next one got 70 views, next one got 50 views, and then the next one got 88,000 views. And like the same thing happened all over again. And it was just realizing that, one, being unemotional about the content you put out. A lot of people are super emotional about it. Post it, then they're just uploading to see who's liking it, see who's all that type of stuff. I just post and continue. Like posting on social media needs to be a 1.5 to 2 minute process, and then you go back to what you're doing. Whereas a lot of other people, it's a 45-minute process per post, and that's not okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm to an extent paraphrasing, Gary Vee here, but sort of
100%.
But to be sort of disconnected from the outcome of it, you're not doing it for the likes, you're doing it because it's your passion and you just want to share your passion. Don't worry about the likes, the views. Do it because you love it, and then just worry about the next piece so that you can continue to put it out there.
100%. And then on top of it, people get emotional about it. Like, oh, I got 15 people only viewed my video, which it might seem like a super small number, but like if you had the opportunity to speak at a coffee shop in front of 15 people, you'd probably take it. What's the difference? It's 2020 and we're in a digital world. And it's if those 15 people, like that content, then you just brought some value to those 15 people, like you would have appreciated if you spoke at a coffee shop to those 15 people.
Yeah, and at the moment, you can't even go to a coffee shop and speak to 15 people. So if you get 15 people online, it's better than you're going to do anyplace else.
That's
Uh,
real.
but that being said, in this environment, how much does just COVID and the unknown of how this will play out, how does that affect your decision making in terms of deals and what you might think as being a good opportunity? Has it changed at all? Are you holding back a little bit, taking more of a sit and wait approach as opposed to being, would you say shoot first, aim later?
So from a real estate standpoint, so our investor base is professional athletes. We're big on the educational side of things before presenting deals. Right now is a perfect opportunity to just, like I said, if you can hold your breath, you have no pressure to. If this is a forever game. You have no pressure to be stressed about a time right now. And so we're looking at this as just a massive opportunity to educate our investors and our new investors that are coming on board, like into our platform. Essentially, we're not buying anything. I'm on the sidelines just watching. I'm listening to a lot of guys make a lot of bold predictions about a lot of different things where this hasn't happened ever. So no one has any type of framework to compare this to. And so I'm definitely just sitting on the sidelines watching, waiting, because I think, we don't know what the residual effect is. I mean, we have ideas of what the residual effect could be of this, but it could be really bad. Like, colleges start to shut down, that real estate around those colleges is going to be really bad. Most people don't understand how much a college holds weight from a real estate standpoint in a whole bunch of, micro markets and submarkets like UMass, like a West Virginia, like any damn school, honestly, because most like that small businesses, yes, they're being affected by COVID, but they'll be way more affected if there's no college anymore in those towns that they're relying on for business. And then from our media companies aspect, we made a hard pivot from what we were doing outside of creative strategy, media buying, and production of content. Now we've made a shift into the podcast production realm. So we've essentially created a turnkey product where we hold our clients' hands through episode 4 of their podcast. And because I think right now is a great time. I think everybody should have a podcast, but right now is a great time because everybody's thought about starting one, but no one's necessarily had the time to do it. So that's kind of where we've made that pivot in that realm as well.
Got it. Yeah, and certainly now's the time to do a lot of things, but education and disseminating information through a podcast, for me anyway, it seems like two no-brainers. One thing I did want to ask you though, because you referenced your team and how much that's made your life easier, and of course it makes sense, right? You have other people to lean on. You don't have to take it all on yourself. This might be a stretch, but do you see any sort of parallels from organized team sports to running a team as an entrepreneur? It might be a little, it is obviously different if you're playing a sport where, everyone has a certain responsibility and you have to rely on one another. But did you take anything from your time playing in the NFL or just football in general? And were you able to apply that to what you're doing now?
100%. I mean, obviously, structure-wise, whether it's a hierarchy or whatever you want to call it, understanding the structure of an NFL, organization and a business organization. But then, really, how I like to, I think there's a level of, how do I explain it? In the NFL, you're expected a lot. Like you're expected a whole bunch, and it's if you're not performing, you're fired. There's no questions about that. And which might not be the right way to go about it in a business standpoint. And like naturally, you go to a place of like, oh, this person just fucked up. Sorry if I don't know if we personally, this person just messed up. This person just messed up. Like, I should fire him at this point. You know what I mean? Like, because that's exactly how you drop a pass in the end zone for a win, and you might get cut if you're not being paid that much because you're at the end of the day, that's what it is. But then you've got, like I say, you have to be extremely unemotional in business, but at the same time, you have to balance that unemotionalness with an extreme level of compassion and empathy, because that's where I think there's a divide between a sports culture and an actual business structure. I think a lot of people, and I've got this from Gary Vee like massively, is it's honey over vinegar. Like most people deal with, business as just it's pure unemotional. I'm rah rah rah, and it's all vinegar in that sense versus like using honey in the sense of building a culture that's based not off of fear but almost out of guilt to not let your leader down in that sense because you're so behind the vision, you're so behind what that person's doing, and you're so want to be a part of it versus it's just a job and it's something I don't like. So I'm constantly asking my team like what like each individual person like what they're doing, do they like it, what don't they like about it, what can we change, how do we make it even better for what you're doing, how does this support your own, like one of my employees, she's an artist as well. Like she does dope art. But I'm like, okay, how do we help that as well? So I'm like, screw it, let's make some shirts. Like let's have some internal shirts just for the whole team to have a T-shirt that says Perspective Global Media on it, so you can just tap into your creative. Like I'll pay you whatever you would charge that anyway. Let's like 2 days ago we are talking about just making these random stickers just to give out, but like tapping into that because I know that's what she likes to do on top of it. So I think it's a level of being a human and being a machine in business. And that perfect balance is what makes you a solid entrepreneur, I think, versus just reading some hard ass book about how you're supposed to be as a boss and then deploying that.
Yeah, what I just heard is a level of awareness, knowing your people, being aware of who they are, what they care about, and staying, on some level, always engaged in that. Not that you're, hammering them any day, or you're, you have your finger on their pulse, but you know what they care about, and you know how to make sure that reignite that spark. If for whatever reason it dwindles or anything. But that's great. Obviously, there's a little bit of parallels there. But leading your team, did you have any particular coach, or this is purely on the football side, but also I would be interested to know on the business side that kind of influenced you enough that you think of them when you're trying to lead your team and your people? Was there any coach or mentor?
Jim Caldwell, man, talk about a gentleman's gentleman. His leadership style is unreal, and it was very like I had Jim Caldwell as a coach from September to December, so September, October, November, 4 months. That was it, and I was on the practice squad except for one game with it. And those 4 months, I learned so much from him as just being an organizational leader, building a culture. Same, almost like I just said, building a culture around guilt. Almost like when Jim Caldwell got fired from the Lions, like there was a feeling like most time you don't give a shit if a coach got fired at the end of the day, but there was a feeling of like, damn, like we just let you down as a coach. And like because we didn't make it to the playoffs is the reason why you got fired. Like this is our fault. You got fired. It's like that was like, and I never had that feel. I never felt that feeling before until that happened, and it was just like like the way he even just so like on Wednesday, our Wednesday morning meeting is, it's usually a longer meeting for most teams in that sense, like a team meeting, because you only meet as a team probably twice, 3 times a week. But that meeting, he'd have so many like his slideshows where like everyone on the team would be looking forward to. Like you go out on the weekend or you're hanging out with your teammates on your off day, like yeah, I'm excited to see what Jim's got today. Like athletes don't talk about stuff like that, you know what I mean? And like, but with him, he had an ability of tapping into that, and his meetings were just dope. Like that, you learn something after every single one of his team meetings about being a man, about how to treat people, about building an effective winning culture. It was like unreal from that perspective.
So then to piggyback off that, if the result is less than what it needed to be, and Jim Caldwell ultimately gets fired, is that on the scheme? Is that on like if it's not buy-in from the players, and everyone loves the head coach, like what ultimately is the reason for the shortcoming? I mean, is it even possible for you to put your finger on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was only there for 2 years, maybe three. He didn't have enough time. I don't think. One, two. From an NFL standpoint, there's such a disconnect between downstairs and upstairs. Like downstairs meeting the players and the coaches, and then upstairs meeting the front office and GM. And that disconnect. I mean, I've been in a situation, not in a situation, but I've been in a situation where we got to our, what do you call it? Like our what's the word? Our position meeting, and our position coach is asking, "Hey, where's so and so at?" And we're like, "Oh, he got cut. You didn't know that?" And he's like, "Wait, what?" Like the coach didn't even know someone got cut, and like now the plans for practice were screwed up because that person wasn't going to be there. But like that's what I mean. There's such a disconnect where players are just moving like pawns on a chessboard, and it's hard to create a culture when you've got. There's nothing wrong. Like, that's what makes a team special. If you can make those pawns move in and out and win, then you did it right. But when you've got, you know, a person who's creating a dope culture downstairs and upstairs, that culture might not be the same. There's a disconnect, if you know what I mean. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, there's a level of, yeah, the players didn't perform to the level they needed to. Maybe the right players weren't in the right seats because of, the shuffling in and out. So we didn't maybe not have the right tools to win in that sense. But there's a multitude of reasons, and that's the beauty of the game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So many games within the game. That of course being one of them. But I had to ask about Darren Fells because are you guys friends? Because just in your time in the NFL, you guys end up being on two teams back to back years, two different teams.
That's my guy, man. I gotta call him. I haven't talked to him in a few months, but that was big bro forever. I mean, when I was in Arizona, he completely looked out for me. That was, I mean, it was, we had three tight ends on the roster, me, him, and Gresham. Sometimes we had a fourth. Um, and after my first year there, right after the season, he was a free agent. He went to Detroit. And then like he'd still had his house in Arizona, so we'd always, I was really good friends with his wife, his kids. I mean, I really got really close with his daughter, his son. He had a little bit later. Um, and then when we went to Detroit, like when I went to Detroit, he was already there. So it was like I got there the first week of the season. He was there the whole off season. So he had a house. Like I mean, I spent the first like 3 weeks. He taught me the whole playbook up and down to like 10 o'clock at night every day. Like when we had Thanksgiving at his house. Um, that was big brother, man. We used to literally we would go through the whole day and just have a conversation the whole day. Like the whole day would be one conversation, if you know what I mean. Like start the conversation in the morning about something, and then we sat next to each other in every meeting, like position meetings, team meetings, special team meetings. Um, so we literally be talking about something the entire day. Practice, we're out there talking about something. Like that was a really cool. D Fells is an amazing mentor, I mean, just amazing story on top of it. Played overseas professional basketball, and then came here, was a journeyman for a year or two, bouncing practice squad to practice squad, then solidified himself in Arizona, and then got himself a nice healthy payday, and continued to just ball out. And now he's in, where's he at now? Houston still?
I don't know, but Houston sounds right.
Yeah, but he's that's a great dude right there, man. Taught me a lot of things, just on and off the field. Being a father, being a man, in that sense as well.
That's awesome. I have something on my desktop right here. Not that you can see it, but I have a quote from Ben Troop, who played for the Titans at University of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Drafting me doesn't help me become a good player. Players help players become good players, and I had a mentor in Aaron Kinney. It's funny, just another tight end who mentored him when he got to Tennessee, but now I'm talking to a former tight end telling me about another tight end. I don't know what is it about that position, but somehow you guys have at least through my eyes anyway, now have a trend of looking out for one another and really helping that really success in life, really flourish.
This real, you learn the most from players when you're playing. I mean, I don't want to put anybody on the bus, but there was one moment we had on one team that I played on where things were going pretty crappy for the season, and our starting quarterback got up at the time and told the story about his rookie year when he met, let's say, one of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. And when he met that person, he was like, "Man, you've had all these great coaches. You had this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. Like, tell me, what's the greatest thing you learned from all these people?" And he said, "Man, I effing hated all those guys. Great players overcome shitty coaches." And when I heard that, I was like, "Damn, it's so crazy," because you learn the most from other players in this league and just their technique, their own mental process, what they've done to overcome some of those shitty coaches in those situations.
All right. Now, with deductive reasoning between Matt Stafford and Carson Palmer, I'm thinking that was probably Carson Palmer, but I'm not going to
Yeah,
ask
that
any
was Carson.
questions.
That was Carson. But yeah, that was Carson. But the story who he was talking about was, we'll not mention who that person is. But
No,
yes.
no, for sure. Um, well, I mean, just as we get closer to winding up, we never really got into your full story, how you even got into the NFL, which is fine. But I want to highlight the fact that you were not the 5-star recruit that everyone wanted. I mean, you were by all means an underdog story to get to, have a chance to make it with the Cardinals. So I just wanted to, if we could bring it back just a couple of years when you're a junior in high school, if I have this right, maybe some basketball dreams, certainly a good football player, but I think something happens to the labrum. Can you just walk me through, if you could, what you were
Yeah.
thinking of in high school and just how this whole thing comes together?
So I'll take you back to middle school. I always had hoop dreams. Like my middle school cut sports, and I wanted to go to the NBA. So my dad used to take me to LA Fitness every morning at 4 in the morning to go
Wow.
and literally get work in. Like I would. You ever seen those jump soles? Those things you put at the bottom of your shoes so it gets your
Yes.
calf stronger, so you can dunk. I do my whole jump soles workout for 15, 20 minutes. Then I get my mid range work in, and then by 5, all the older guys, like the guys before going to work, they play pickup. So then I just in middle school playing pickup with all these old big guys. And it's so funny because like I'll go back to the gym now and those same guys are still there, and like literally from since I was 11, 10, 11, 12 years old to now being 27, still the same group of guys there. But had hoop dreams, and then got to my junior year of high school, and I'm just like, I felt like I was at the disadvantage because I'd come into basketball season every year in football shape, and like it was almost embarrassing. It's like I want to be better at basketball. There's no way I'm going to make it to the NBA if I don't score 1,000 points while I'm here. If I don't, if I don't actually ball out and solidify myself as one of the best players on the team, I'm not even going to get a scholarship. And I told my I was in boarding school, petty school, and my coach was also my just advisor as well. And I, went to him like, I'm thinking about quitting football and just focusing on basketball. Like, what do you think about it? And he was pretty much just like, football teaches you things I can't teach you on the basketball court. So stick with it one more year. And if you really hate it, then we'll figure out. We'll double down on basketball and we'll figure out how to get you into college via basketball. And I'm like, cool. And then being self-aware, my junior year was my breakout year in football, and just realized I'm going to be too many. The letters were coming in from schools for football and not for basketball at the time. And I was just like, I'm the only way I'm going to college if it's all paid for. So I think I can go to college playing football. And going into my senior year after my junior year, I did the whole camp circuit between junior and senior year of high school. Um, Garnished a lot of interest from a lot of different schools. The only offer I had was from Monmouth, and then University of Delaware, Boston College, UConn were on the cusp of offering me. They wanted to see like my first 3 games. 2 days before the first game, I played quarterback and safety my senior year, and we are doing this stupid hitting drill. And where the defensive guy lays on his back, the offensive guy has the ball, and he's standing up, and they're 20 yards apart from each other. And it's just set, go, and just smash each other. And I'm just like, I'm the quarterback. I'm going to get hurt if I do this. But I'm also not soft, and I'm not going to just sit out. So I'm just going to leg swipe people. And I was like, it's funny. The dude who wound up hurting me is one of my closer best friends. He was like, yo, you keep leg swiping, I'm going to jump over you, because we were partnered up. And I'm like, yeah, right. And he actually jumps over me, and I grab his foot, and then my knuckles pretty much touched my butt, and my labrum
Oh,
popped out. That was bad. Like they couldn't. My arm was dislocated for I think about 7 hours. They had to give me morphine in order to put it back into place. Um,
oh.
so that was a mess. And 2 days before the first game, like the first game, Boston College's wide receiver coach is on the sideline, and I'm in a sling. So it was like, damn, like this is it for me in that sense. But I still had the scholarship from Monmouth. Monmouth gratefully honored my scholarship. Had to get surgery, and didn't hear from any of those schools ever again, and went to Monmouth from there.
Yeah, and that's wild. Good on Monmouth, right? For sticking to their word. But you get there, and I don't know if there's any correlation between the injury and this, but you don't exactly hit the ground running when you get there either. It's really after redshirting that first year, your fourth year at school is when you actually start to get on the field and be able to catch some balls, get a couple touchdowns, having then moved from wide receiver to tight end.
A
What
lot
was
of
your
guys
thought
got
process through those years, man, of just being like, I'm not on the field. Do I really want to do this? And this is all the while you're starting to flip homes. You're getting into the real estate thing. So you're already having this other distraction. And I don't mean it, distraction in a bad way, but like you have this other, love, something that can really take your time and energy. And now there's a bit of a divide of, I can imagine anyway, of, what do I want to do?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of guys got lost in the sauce in those times. Guys who were like me on the bench. You know, that unstructured free time. A lot of guys got either in trouble, got kicked out, got impatient and transferred, and went through the whole transfer, culture, which I'm not against or for. It's just what it is. Um, and yeah, me always being an entrepreneur, like before, even before the flipping houses, I had an iPhone repair business. My little brother going into college that summer had cracked his iPhone 4 at the time. And my dad was like, I'm not paying for it to get fixed. Like, just deal with your cracked phone. And YouTube at that time was big on, this is 2010, 2011. YouTube was huge on just instructional videos. And I just saw an instructional video for something else. And I'm like, maybe they have a video on how to fix an iPhone. I go and check it out. I'm like, whoa. Then I go to Amazon, and Prime shipping wasn't even out yet at the time. And it was like 25 bucks though for a new screen. I'm like, it costs $100 at the mall. And it takes me like 6 hours to fix his phone. And I'm like, yo, and it like worked at the end. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a business. And I literally take my phone out of my pocket and up all night, just taking my phone apart, putting it back together, taking it apart, putting it back together. So I could do it from, 4 hours to do it in 20 minutes. And when I stepped on campus my freshman year, I was the iPhone repair guy. I fixed 3 to 4 phones a day. I undercut them all and charged $60 instead of $100. And I wouldn't say I made a fortune, but I made a lot of money doing that.
On a college
And
budget, that's a fortune.
oh my gosh, I never asked my parents for money, like, ever, because I didn't have to. And from there, flipping houses at the time, back to, football and being a bench player. My ex-girlfriend at the time, her dad started a house flipping business. My degree was business with a concentration in real estate. And, we were in North Jersey, and we flipped a whole bunch of houses up in North Jersey. I'd purposely scheduled my classes at night because our practice was midday, I believe. So in the mornings of 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., I'm up in North Jersey, knocking down walls, putting down floors, putting in offers on pre-foreclosures, handwriting our direct mail. That guy, my ex's dad, was also owned a print shop. So to alleviate some of his time so he could do more high level stuff on the real estate side, I used to fulfill all his printing duties. I was literally driving his F-250, like bringing our deliveries to like the back of the post office where all the big tractor trailers are. And I'm just like in there with a pickup truck, like backing in, like drop shipping like loads of paper and loads of stuff off. Like it was wild, like thinking about like the stuff I was doing, like instead of other stuff. It was that was my day to day until me and his daughter broke up, and that whole relationship kind of ended.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a very important piece, and I'm glad that we talked about it, because for us to have that conversation at the jump about all these things that you're doing now, it's like back when most kids today, right? What are they doing? In a world where they're actually at school, a lot of it's probably farting around. Not everyone is waking up at 6 a.m. every day to go, spend the first 4 hours of their day doing business, like a legitimate, whether it's working on phones, flipping houses, then going to practice, then doing all of their courses, and then their homework after that. I mean, the work ethic from an early age and just an introduction to real estate at a fairly early age. I mean, it's not like you can start real estate much earlier than that. You have to be old enough to be able to get in there, do the work, and then, have the money to participate. But I think that that's a very key element to this. And to top it all off, in 2015, your last year at Monmouth, you're voted a captain. So it's not like your teammates didn't respect you. It's not like you were just going through the motions to be on the football team. To get voted a captain, I would imagine they held you in very high regard while you're doing all these other things as well.
Yeah, I meant a lot. Being a captain at Monmouth meant a whole. No one's ever asked me that question. It meant it was a lot. It was cool. Kind of a culmination of just everything that happened over the years, and trusting that process, knowing I was always good enough. It was just timing and opportunity. Like the person who was in front of me was better than me. Like his name's Neil Sterling. He played the NFL the same amount of time as me, maybe a year longer. He took a year off. He just had a kid. I think he's going back. But like he was better than me, and like I was self-aware enough to like a lot of guys are just like almost you always think you're the best, but it was like yo, this dude's way better than me. It was almost like I need to figure out how to get as good as him, or I'm never gonna play. And then an opportunity came up my senior year of camp. A tight end got hurt, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put on some weight and play tight end. Like, well, a couple of my teammates put the bug in my ear, like, yo, you should think about tight end. And I put on 40 pounds in like a month and a half, just taking creatine and literally just eating 5 slices of pizza with every meal and cottage cheese and hard-boiled eggs with every meal, and put on all that weight. First game, got my first catch. Second game, got my first touchdown. Started every game after that. And, you know, I'd let my playing do the talking. And then, you know, I guess the natural leadership ability allowed me, you know, my 5th year to get voted in as captain. It was a really cool experience and process.
And that was only a couple of years ago. You're still in your 20s, so what's going through your head? You know, that guy you just mentioned is thinking about, you know, maybe trying to get back into it. Have you ever thought about, you know, maybe, just maybe, you might be able to take another crack at it?
Yeah, so I've been back in training. Been in this last in this last month and a half, actually, just lost 35 pounds. Just working out and getting back into the scheme of things. So I'm planning on making a comeback for the NFL this upcoming season. Still got it. Still got that itch going. I haven't gotten. I've gotten catches in an actual game, but I haven't gotten to that end zone yet, and kind of got that burning, that itching desire to tap back in. So after building the teams and systems around me, it's essentially unlocked. One, giving me the headspace to even think clearly that I can actually play again. And then two, not have everything crumble if I do decide to go back and play. I can actually have people in place, systems in place. So my life isn't being ran by being an entrepreneur. I get to do everything I want to do. Ultimately not judging myself, but still fulfilling the obligations that I need to fulfill to make everything run right.
I love it. I can't wait to see it happen, man. I'm super excited for it. I can't wait. And I know we're running up against it, so I want to get you out of here on this little thing that I call the gauntlet. So I just got a couple quick hitter questions, man. I need to know what's most important. Is it having the number one offense or the number one defense?
Offense, 100%. I'd rather win 155 to 140 than winning, 3-0.
Fair enough. Now, based off of the quote that was already mentioned by a former teammate, what's most important, players or scheme?
Players. Players make the scheme.
Yeah, a little foreshadowed rather. Now, was there a coach or a player that you just ever wish that you had the chance to have played with or lined up with?
On the same side of the ball?
Doesn't matter.
Probably. I would have liked to play because I played against him. I would like to play Colin Kaepernick. Like playing against Kaepernick was wild. Like in the middle of everything going down, that was like watching him getting booed in his own stadium, and actually getting to shake his hand after the game. Like it was one of the craziest, deepest. You're in the moment. It's hard to, take a step back and realize you're living through history in that sense. It'd been awesome to, be in the same locker room with him, catch a ball from him, and actually play alongside him.
Definitely. Favorite football memory?
Favorite football memory? It's funny, we were just talking about this the other day. It's when I was in Pee Wee football. We kicked this team's ass called Belmar. It's right down the street from us, but they blew us out in the middle of the season. And in the playoffs, we just crushed them. I was the quarterback. My best friend was the running back, and I was just interviewing him on his IG. He was on his IG. I did an interview with him the other day, and I don't even know how or why we talked about that. Oh, we were talking about it because my friend tends to get very stoic in athletic situations. Like he doesn't like the rah-rah, hype stuff. And he was asking me, the question was like, what's the craziest thing you've learned from somebody? And I was like, I learned from you. I remember that game. Everybody's going crazy, like getting hyped before the game, like smacking each other in the head. And he's like, yo, don't do that. Like, let me tap in that sense. And it was just such a fond memory. But that ass kicking we put on that team is something that I'll always remember. And it's so long ago, but it's so wild. Like this is like 100-pound football, I'm pretty sure.
I love it. Now, this normally I ask this specific to young kids, athletes, someone that looks up to you and says, "Hey, I want to make it to the NFL." So I'd like to ask you two questions, just given everything that you know. One is, what's the best piece of advice that you would give to a young athlete that wants to make it to the NFL? But after that, what's just the best piece of advice that you would give to anyone, now an adult, that is trying to get a grasp of maybe the real estate world, or maybe what to do if they're interested in learning more about that? Just any sort of base, high level advice there.
For that young person trying to get to the NFL, I think it's really a level of you got to balance like your optimism with being delusional at the same time. It's a massive level of self awareness that comes with it. Because you could have told me I was delusional. 3 catches, 3 touchdowns, under 1,000 yards. Not many tight ends probably made it doing that. But I think there's a level of like, it sounds so cliche when people say you got to love the process and all that type of stuff. Like if you don't love when your throat is burning from like a workout, feels like you just swallowed lava. If you don't love when you can't walk because you just squatted your face off or something of that sort, if you don't love, like if you just love the working out when there's fans watching and there's people watching and it's being recorded and stuff like that, if you don't love working out at 1:30 in the morning because you didn't get your workout in all day because you had a whole bunch of other stuff to do, and you can't record it so people even know that you're working out that late, if you don't love that, you'll never make it, because that's the stuff that it's super cliche, but the stuff that people don't see is the reason why people make it to those areas. Like if you don't love the fact that you can't play video games because you're training all day, or you like when it comes time to when I was training to go to the league, I got trained at this awesome facility called Test in New Jersey, but like I used to make it a point to be the first person there and be the last person to leave, but like to actually do work like while I'm there, not just to just wait around and be the last person to leave. And I think if you don't actually love it, it's just not a sustainable goal at the end of the day, because that's what it's going to take. And then doing that continuously is how is really just callousing like your mind and your brain in that sense. If you don't love that, then it's not for you, and it's not for everybody. At the end of the day, it's a privilege at the end of the day. And then for somebody looking to get into any industry, especially like real estate or anything of that sort, and this is the most like screw the fact that I have a podcast production company. I would honestly, genuinely say one of the best ways is starting a podcast, because it's the quickest way to accelerate your learning on any topic by meeting the people that you want to and should meet without being a pest, and flipping the leverage to now have these people in your network as genuine friends versus people that you're hitting up to pick their brain. At the end of the day, people don't like to get their brain picked. It's an interesting act of picking someone's brain. So I think if you want to get into real estate, if I'm 18 years old and I wanted to get into real estate, I'd start a real estate podcast. I'd interview everyone in my area, or anyone that I would listen to every real estate podcast and go, okay, that guy sounds interesting. Have him on my show. Learn about this guy. Let me have him on my show. Because I think when you reach out to people saying, hey, Steve, love what you're doing, like, love to pick your brain on being an FA someday. And, that probably doesn't happen to many FAs. So I'd say you probably would do that anyway. But like most people, when that happens, like you're going to get a 1 out of 20 response in that sense. But if you flip the script saying, love what you've done, blah, 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 I'd love to have you on my podcast called Blah, Blah, Blah's Journey. Because then you can make it super general and interview people who are FAs, real estate investors, cannabis investors, anything. But now, instead of having that relationship of you taking everything, you flip the leverage, and now you're giving a platform for someone to tell their story on. And now on the back end, you guys can actually talk. And like the podcast is the same questions that you'd ask when you're picking that person's brain.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? But that, I think it's a tool. Like, forget about the audience. Forget about ads and monetizing your audience. Forget about how many people are listening to it. For you, genuinely, I think starting a podcast is the best way to accelerate your network, and then almost whatever you're trying to accomplish on the back end to do business with those people. you could. Like, you want to buy a large apartment complex, interview a bunch of developers, interview a bunch of people who raise capital, connect the two, and you being that connector, you might be able to finesse your way into a deal.
Absolutely. Really good advice there. Well, Hakeem, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome to hear your story, and it's very clearly a story that is still being written. I can't wait to see what comes next.
100%. I appreciate you having me on the show, my friend.